idea of AI isn't new. People have been talking about machines that think like humans for a long time. But it took until the late 20th century for computers to become powerful and widespread enough for a serious AI research. Today, AI is everywhere, from our phones to our home. It's hard to imagine a life without AI. In HR circles, there's a lot of talk about using artificial intelligence. To make things better, many HR leaders are trying it out. In fact, 38% of them have already started using AI to make HR process much smoother. They say that AI helps them in tasks like organizing data to making data driven decisions. But while AI can help with tasks and give us smarter insights, we also need to remember the importance of people in HR. It's like finding the right mix between technology and human connection. That's what today's topic is all about. Leveraging artificial intelligence in human resource. Let me introduce you all to our esteemed speaker for today, Mr. Siddharth. Siddharth has a remarkable track record of putting customers first and using cutting edge technology to solve their problem. Throughout his career, he has played key roles in conceptualizing, building, scaling, and optimizing business portfolios across various sectors, including product companies, startup, captives, and large IT service organizations. His expertise span a range of focus areas, including product management, incubating new ideas, data analytics, NLP, and conversational AI. Siddharth has worked across diverse industries such as technology, retail, CPG, banking and finance services, insurance, and telecom. With specialization in MarTech, HR Tech, Sales Tech, Customer Analytic Experience Management, and more, Siddharth brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our webinar, promising valuable insights into the integration of artificial intelligence in human resource practices. The platform is all yours, Siddharth.
Thank you. Thank you, Veera, for that very kind introduction. And I'm definitely excited to be here, excited to share what I know about how AI is being used in the HR world. And excited to also take any questions or anything that you have to share as well on this particular topic. So let's get started. This is what I want to cover over the next 30 minutes or so. Instead of just going straight away into the topic, I think it's important to understand how the world of technology has really been changing over the past couple of decades, right? There have been like phenomenal innovations and inventions that have really disrupted the way we live, the way we work. So we'll probably start off by looking at that, right? And then naturally flow into now what AI's place is in that and how the AI revolution has really come about, right? And then we'll probably shift gears and then go into HR, right? Talk about the areas of HR, be it recruitment, being onboarding, be it talent management, how AI really plays a role. Let's also look at some of the risks and ethical considerations with AI. It's a very hot topic these days. And then finally, we'll close out with what the future really holds with AI. Right? We are really at the beginning, I would say, of a really big change in the way things are going to work. And I will probably talk a bit about what's really coming in the future as well. Now, before I get started, it'll be good to really understand this audience a bit better, right? So, Sheetam, if you can just run the poll, I just want to understand what really is your role? Are you a student? Are you a recruiter? Do you belong to a HR team, but maybe a different function? Maybe you're in talent management, operations, or are you really not a part of the HR team or a student? Really would be good to understand what your specific role is. So if you could just take a second and enter your inputs, that'll be great.
I request all our participants to please answer the poll so we get to know you better.
Okay, so we have a few more, about 14 of them, 15 of them have responded. Looks like quite a few students, equal mix of students as well as people belong to the HR function, which is good. and then some don't really belong here. That's good, but I think we have quite a few people. I would say majority still seem to be part of the HR team, which is great. You're in the right place and the right webinar. Okay, so let me move on, right? I started off by talking about uh, how technology over the last 2 decades has really reshaped the way we kind of live, the way we work, the way we interact, right? And I'm going to say we should consider ourselves pretty lucky to be living in an era where there's so much of technological innovation happening, right? At a very constant pace. And a lot of this impacts the way we do things on a daily basis. And I will say, especially the last 2 decades, right? I will say post the start of the millennium, I think we've seen lots and lots of new changes. About 20 years ago, social networks got off to a great start, right? We had Facebook. I think a lot of us still are on Facebook. We also then had YouTube coming in a year after that, and that has changed the way we consume content, right? YouTube kind of proved that content can be consumed anywhere, content can be produced anywhere. So there was a very big change in the way things happen. Twitter started a year after that. Twitter, of course, with microblogging, there's a big shift from normal blogs to microblogging. 2007, I would say, was probably the really big change that happened. The invention of the iPhone. The iPhone came in. The concept of apps that changed a lot of things. The way we use technology, the way we communicate, interact. What do we use the phone for? Pretty much, there are like 25 different things that we are probably using the phone for, and there are probably 24 other things that we were using before for some of the functions which are obsolete at this point in time, right? We went into wearable devices in 2007, the Fitbit coming in. 2008 started the whole concept of platforms, right? Airbnb followed up with, we had Uber, we had Instagram coming in 2010, right? 2010 was a big year as well. The concept of platforms became one of the most common things that started impacting our lives, right? Snapchat came in 2011. The concept, the first ever, I would say, AI thing, which we could look and feel, came in 2014 with Alexa, followed up with Google Assistant. And I would say over the past 5 years, a lot of the inventions have revolved around AI. Right? They may not have been only AI, it could have been devices, it could have been software products, but they all came up with a touch of AI. And the recent hype about artificial intelligence started roughly around 2018. And of course, in 2022 was when that AI have really exponentially increased, right? With OpenAI coming up with ChatGPT. The key message I think we need to take from all of this is we're going to, in the next 20 years as well, right? We are going to see phenomenal technological innovations coming in, right? A lot of these products that you see in front of you have probably impacted your personal life, right? The way you do things. We do use some of this in our professional lives as well, but to a large extent, it has impacted the way we interact with our friends, we interact with our family. But this really shouldn't be the case, right? All the innovation and invention that has happened should also get transformed and be part of our corporate life, be part of our professional life. We spend majority of our time in the day at work, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be exposed to a lot of these technologies or have the ability to use a lot of these technologies at work as well, right? From the more business perspective. I'll tell you what I mean by that, right? There's no reason why we need to use Alexa only to find out what the IPL score is, right? Why can't I use Alexa and ask it, when does my appraisal cycle start? Why can't I use a smart speaker like Alexa just to find out the company where I work, who are our top customers, right? Or who's the head of a marketing team? I've just joined the company. I want to know who heads marketing, who heads sales, who heads engineering. Who should I contact if I have a problem? Who should I contact if I need this particular data or information? There's no reason why all the changes in the technology inventions we have seen should not really get translated when we go into our workplace as well. Right? Or even a very open-ended, I would say, qualitative question like, what should I do for my next promotion? Right? can a device come and tell me, hey, this is what all the other people before you in your company have done to get promoted, and this is probably what you should do. They did some learning things. They went and took part in like critical projects, and they were able to compete successfully in them, right? So there's no reason why we should not be able to experience and use all the technological changes that we have seen in our consumer life, more of consumer technology that I showed in our business life. And that applies to AI, and that applies to any function, right? And more importantly, I will say this applies to the people function, and which majority of you are a part of. Because the people function, the talent function, the human resource function is easily one of the most important things, right? Without the people, no business is really going to be successful, right? And for the really business flywheel to be set in motion, you need the people function to be performing well, right? And by that, I mean people who are part of the organization, as well as the people who are responsible for them, which is the HR function, right? So before I go in directly into how AI is going to help the HR function, I want to spend about, I'll say 5 to 7 minutes just trying to understand this tech, especially about AI. One of my constant complaints has always been that people think AI is very complicated. They think it's like a black box. All I need to know is it can do magic. But if you actually look at it, artificial intelligence is not very complex. Right? At the core of it, there are maybe 3 different things. There's data, there's algorithm, and there's computing. And if we try to relate it to the way we have become intelligent, to the way we are able to give answers to questions, we'll find that artificial intelligence, it's a very simple topic at its core. But before I go into that, I do want to also gauge how much do you know about artificial intelligence. So Sheetam, if you can just run a quick poll so that we can understand maybe the spectrum of how much people know about AI, that'll be really helpful. So if you can just take a minute and then answer these questions, that'll be great.
Yes, like audience, as we discussed earlier, AI is not new in the concept, although it took a lot of time for it to actually become a part of our lives, but we have been using it a lot these days. So why don't you let us know how much you know about it so we can discuss accordingly?
Okay, so I think we have some responses coming in. Majority at least know a bit, which is great, right? I think we are living in a era that you definitely need to know AI to some extent because we're using it. It's very embedded in our lives. So not surprised that majority at least know a bit. Maybe a few people are yet to get started on the journey, and we at least have one other expert.
Yes, we have experts as well.
Yeah, okay.
I would like to know what these experts are into, which field you guys are in. Let us know in the chat box so you get to know you better.
All right. Great. I think we majority have answered, right? So maybe we can go on. I think this gives me a fair indication of the depth to which I need to go in when I'm going to cover AI. Okay. All right. So great. So let me move on, right? And I'm going to start off by just giving the standard definition, right? So I'm sure all of you will agree that AI is nothing but the ability for a machine to perform the functions that are generally attributed to a human being, right? I'm able to understand, I'm able to talk, I'm able to solve a problem, I'm able to be creative. But the key thing is this machine now can be anywhere, right? It can be on my laptop, it can be in a robot, it can be on my phone. We see a lot of AI on the phone. It can be part of the Zoom software, right? It has an AI component as well. It could be part of my iPad or any smart devices as well. So the medium in which AI can be realized, AI can be used, can be multiple, right? The channels in which we can interact with it. But let's look at how does it actually work? And for that, we'll need to go into the way we have learned things. I'm sure when we were babies, right, there was nothing really new. But slowly, as we started interacting with our mother, our father, our siblings, our friends, we started learning things. We observed them. We figured out how to do a few things, right? We're standing up, we're talking, we're going and picking up something, eating. And slowly as we progressed, right, we learned from more and more people around us. Not only did we learn what to do, but we also learned information, right? We got data. I was able to, when I was maybe 7 years old, you could ask me the capital of maybe my country and I could answer, right? Slowly, data, information. We started learning all of that from people. It could be people around us, it was from books, it was from school. But it took us some time. It took us quite a bit of time for us to keep adding on to this bank of knowledge that we have. And along the way, we also figured out how to be creative, right? Somebody asked us a question, we could give a creative response. Somebody asked us to write a story, we could do that. But all of this took time. It was a natural evolution through which each and every one of us on this call has come to the state that we are in today. Right? And along the way, it was not only data and information, we also learned to identify, we learned language and a whole bunch of things. And as we go in this journey of life, we're going to continue learning more and more. Right? People who are old are supposed to be wise, purely because they've seen more people, they've talked to more people, they've traveled a lot, they have more information, data, they've encountered more situations, they know how to deal with those situations. So now let's try to apply this, and let's try to take a very an example of how I could use all of this information. Let's take every bit of knowledge I have, every bit of knowledge each and every one of you on the call has, and let's write it out into a book. Okay. And let's assume what you see in front of you, that library, has all the books that we have written. Maybe I know about flowers, somebody else knows about countries, somebody else knows about computers. Maybe somebody is an expert in dealing with specific scenarios, interpersonal scenarios. Somebody knows about medicine, somebody knows about marketing. Somebody knows about people. So everything that we know how to deal with situations, data, information, we write it into books and put it into this library. And let's assume the library you have in front of you has all of that. We can now get a computer system to read all these books, right? And if we can read all these books, this computer system will have the collective knowledge of each and every one of us. And it will have it in a much shorter time frame than us. Let's assume each of every, we have on an average, it's taken us 25 years to gain all of this knowledge. So the thousands of years of collective wisdom and knowledge and data that we have, a computer system can now gain this in a much, much shorter time frame. Not seconds, but a certain, a much, much shorter time frame, maybe hours, right, is what it would take depending on the computing power to gain all this. And once it has this knowledge, it can respond similarly to each and every one of us. Right? We could all have been experts in 35 different things, but now the system in a mere few hours has become expert. And that's what artificial intelligence really is. We've been able to give all the data and information that is out there to a computer system, and it's been able to figure it out. So if you really look at what has really happened, the data which has been publicly available, right, which websites on the internet, with digitized information, books, articles, anything that is publicly available, we have trained systems on it. We've also trained systems on things which are not publicly available, and I'll get to that. But more importantly, what has happened in the last 2 years, or I'll say 4 years, right, but came to prominence only about a year and a half ago, is we were able to make this computer system become an expert in language. And what this really meant was all this collective knowledge in that library, you can ask it a question and it'll be able to respond to it, right? And that really has what sparked off the Gen AI revolution, if I can call it, with ChatGPT that got released in November, right? Or Gemini, a whole bunch of other things, Claude, a whole bunch of different mediums. So this is the reason AI has really taken a much, much larger role, simply because we were able to provide a natural language interface by which we could ask it these questions, right? But AI has been in existence for a much, much longer time. We've been training these systems on openly available data as well as privately held data for a long, long time. But because we were able to provide that natural language interface, now it's democratized it, right? Anybody in the world can now go and access that. And that's what has really sparked off this revolution last year. I spoke about publicly available data, but you can also train the data in like private data, right? So maybe I work in a company ABC. I could train it on the employees that I have. I can train it on all the businesses that I'm involved in, what I sell, product, service, who I sell it to. I can train it on all the customers that I sell it to, as well as all the operation activities that I do. So if I'm going to write, taking the same analogy, books on all of this and try and make the computer system read it, it could help me cut short time it would take for me to do certain tasks simply because it has a collective wisdom of everybody in my company. Not only the people who are there in my company today, but the people who have been in the company for the last 15, 20 years, simply because all of that has now been digitized and put into books. Right? We do need to create custom interfaces for this, right? And we'll talk a bit about that when it comes to But to put it simply, this is what artificial intelligence is, right? Feed a computer system a lot of data, collective wisdom, and now it has the same knowledge as each and every one of us on the spot. So now that we've covered what AI is, right, and I hope that at least made some of you who may not might have been looking at AI more as a black box, slightly simpler to understand. Let's look at how this can be applied to the world of HR. I think that's what we are all here for. So when it comes to a talent life cycle in any company, right, there are various stages. And I'm sure I've put about 6 stages here. Some people could say 4, some people could put 10, right? But ideally, you look at hiring somebody, you source profiles, you hire them, you onboard them, right? You develop them, constantly engage with them, right? Go into a cycle of growing, you operate entire business. And this, to put it simply, covers the talent life cycle. But there are a lot of personas who are involved in this. You have prospective employees, you have the employee who's joined, recruiter who's got them in, you can have talent engagement lead, you can have somebody as part of operations, you can have a HR manager, a whole bunch of personas who are there. Now, artificial intelligence and whatever I've spoken about, right, especially both the specific use cases I talked, publicly available information as well as privately held information within the company can be very, very useful while each and every one of these personas go about doing their role. And we'll quickly look at what these specific use cases could be, and I'll also show a few examples as well as outputs that we've seen from ChatGPT and other platforms. So let's start off with at the very beginning, right? So we do have some students here, and I'll get to you very quickly, right? But let's assume you're a recruiter. And the first thing is to screen resumes, and usually that is a very painful job. It takes a lot of time. Does the resume that you have in front of you, does it really match the job requirements? And I'm sure, if the recruiters who are there on the call, you'll probably be inundated every time you put something on LinkedIn with at least 1,000 profiles. And how do you screen them quickly? How do you save your time? And this is where AI can really help. Assume you have a list of what your actual requirements are, and you also have resumes in front of you, right? And the AI has read the book, right? Going back to my example on people who have done this role, what kind of profiles they had, right? They have a historical list of profiles, they have a historical list of employees who did that particular role, what their qualifications was, right? Also knows the job description. It can actually do a mapping, right? Just like if I could sit down and spend maybe 10 hours and go through 200 resumes and figure out these are the top 10 candidates, the AI can really now do it in a very, very short amount of time, right? Simply because it has that body of knowledge with it. So it can, again, do that automated candidate matching as well. And very quickly, I'm going to show an example as to how this would work, right? Because candidate matching is really not about skills. It's also about, are they really going to do well in this organization? Will there be a culture fit? And all of that plays a very important role as well. And automatically it can do that in a much shorter amount of time. And both the scenarios I've described here really do is cut short the time it takes to identify somebody and go about the interview process. Interview assistants, right? There are a lot of these tools out there that can provide insights to an interview, right? I go in, I meet somebody. There's lots that the person on the other side is trying to do in terms of analyzing me. A, am I giving the right answers? B, how's my body language? How's my facial expression? So am I really showing confidence? Or am I showing somebody who's just maybe memorized some answers and come into so all of this can be very easily analyzed, right, by AI tools and give you a view of is this candidate really going to be a good candidate or not for your particular organization. Right. So we'll quick look at a few examples. Right, I'm going to take Cognavi. Right, Cognavi in fact has a lot of these tools inbuilt as part of its product. Right. So what you're seeing here is the starting point. Right, I can just go as a recruiter. I can just go and say, I want somebody who have these skill sets, right? In this particular location, this is how much I'm willing to pay, right? So you've really set the very clear attributes. And what the system is going to do now is going to go and look at various profiles of people, the prospective candidates who have enrolled in Cognavi, and do a very quick pattern matching and try to figure out who really would be a good fit. And that's the starting point, right? So now if you have you really don't need to even go and put a job posting, right? As long as you go and give your criteria, it's going to filter and give the most appropriate candidates for your company right next to you. I spoke about video analysis. And one of the things that the system, in fact, has is it asks all the candidates to record videos about their background. It also asks questions around culture fit topics, right, or how they dealt with various scenarios. And what happens is it analyzes them and then comes and gives a specific view of how was the response, how much time did they take, right? Are they going to be a good fit culturally? What was the summary of what they actually said? So what a recruiter really needs to do, right? Their job has become much, much simpler because what this AI system is really doing is going and because it has read the books, has a body of knowledge of good candidates, of not so good candidates, it has a body of knowledge what your role really requires. It's able to do that matching and come and summarize everything. Right? So it's not only a question of AI algorithms in place, but it's also able to use the language it learned, right? Previously, I'd mentioned one of the key reasons for this AI revolution is it became very proficient in language, right? Summarizing information, talking to you, right? It's able to come and provide that to you. So you can also ask questions and say, hey, who are the top 10 candidates? Can you tell me a bit about them? And the AI system will respond to you. Right? So this is one specific area where AI has played a very significant role. And recruitment, how do you source the right candidates? How do you analyze them? And how do you get them for more through the specific interview process? I know we have quite a few students on the call, so I'm going to talk a bit about how you can leverage AI as part of your journey trying to get into the business world. One is if you're not doing this, you should be using some of these tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, which is basically this Bard, to understand the company, right? So let's assume tomorrow you have an interview with company PQR. You should go and say, hey, can you tell me a bit about this company? What do they do? Who are their customers? And this really will help you understand the company, right? It'll also help you understand if you are really going to be a good fit in that company. Is this a company you're going to really like working for? You can even figure out common interview questions. There are a lot of portals out there which have all the common interview questions you get asked when you go to a particular company, right? And because ChatGPT has read that book, because all of this is available on the World Wide Web, it can come and tell you. It can nicely summarize and tell you, right? Not really give you an entire list which you need to go through. These are the top 5 questions you're going to be asked if you are going for this particular role, right? And you can better prepare now. But more importantly, you can also understand the culture within an organization, right? There are a lot of portals out there which talk about how their experience has been employees writing about their experience post joining that company. For example, Glassdoor, right? And you can go and read that information and come and advise you on that as well. As well as, just like I spoke about AI analyzing a video that a candidate has uploaded, there are a lot of these AI video interview tools which you can use to do a mock interview, right? So you can just go and say, I want to, I'm attending an interview for a Python developer tomorrow. What are some of the questions I'm probably going to be asked, right? And then you can have the interview as well. So a lot of very interesting products have been built on top of the underlying AI infrastructure today. And whatever your role is, you're a student, you're in business, you need to try to understand how you can actually leverage some of them. Many of them are openly available. You can use some of them, could come with a cost, but there are a lot of tools out there, enough tools out there that you can go and start using like right now, just after this webinar as well. Okay. We talked about identifying candidates, getting candidates inside, right? Going through the interview process. We talked about if you are attending an interview, what do you do? But once employees have come in, right, there are a lot of very interesting use cases, and specifically this is very close to my heart because I've implemented some of this, right? Is these onboarding assistants. One of the most, I would say, tricky times is the first 1 month you're in an organization. You're still trying to understand, you're trying to fit in. There are people in the organization who are trying to gauge you, who are trying to analyze you, who are going to try to see if you are going to fit in here, right? And this is a time where you need a lot of support. You need a buddy, right? Usually a lot of companies assign buddies. But we're living in an age where there are a lot of these onboarding assistants, right? So the first day I come in, I can start talking to this assistant, which it could be just a chat bot, or it could be available on a website, it could be a mobile app on my phone. And I can ask it questions, say, how do I set up my laptop? Where's the cafeteria? How do I enroll for health insurance? Right? Who's who in this particular company? Right? You can ask it even questions, who's been a fast tracker in this company and how do I emulate them? So these onboarding assistants are really completely changing the employee experience today in many organizations, right? And whatever company you're going to join, there's a good chance you're going to have these virtual assistants, and use them to your advantage, because then they can be your buddy, giving you all the information. And they need not be only during the onboarding phase; they can be with you throughout your life cycle, helping you with training, right? Trying to understand what kind of training plans you need to do. They are also sometimes used by the leadership to understand what's your move. There's a particular tool I've used where first thing when you log on in the morning, they come and ask you, hey, Sidharth, what's your mood today, right? Are you happy? Are you not so happy? And if at all you say, no, I'm feeling a bit down, it tries to ask you a few questions. It then captures this from every employee in the company and bubbles it up and gives it to a leadership, right? Who then try to figure out if they need to do anything. Do they need to do an engagement program? Do they need to work on something? So a lot of interesting tools, all driven by artificial intelligence, are now becoming pretty commonplace, I would say, in organizations, right? Be it onboarding, be it helping with training, be it just trying to understand what the specific mood is, right? And I'll close out by talking about slightly more advanced tools which have come into the place as well, right? Wherein I've started my journey and going on my journey. The goal of any business, goal of the leaders, is to make sure everybody's set up for success, right? So a lot of these tools are trying to understand, how am I working? Am I interacting? And it then tries to collate all of this and be able to provide to managers and to employees what do they need to do in order to do even better. Right? Some of these tools also, based on the way I'm working, can predict whether I'm going to leave the company or not. Because going back to what book it would have read, it would probably read a book which has information on all the people who have left this company and what was different in them, right? Do their engagement levels drop? Were they spending less time in office? Were they spending more time doing something else at work, right? And what their specific other attributes were. So all of this really helps businesses succeed, right? Because it's important that they understand that any employee who comes in is a good fit, right? Starting up the business has a good experience, be it onboarding or be it doing their journey here, as well as we need to make sure that employees stay on, right? Because employees not staying on is easily the single biggest reason businesses don't succeed, right? Businesses with high attrition rates generally will not succeed in the long run. It's important to make sure you engage with them and make sure So levels are low, attrition levels at least are low. And finally, right, and we'll see a few quick examples about this. Um, we spoke about AI being trained on publicly available information and also privately available information. A lot of these examples mostly take private, but they also take publicly available information. But it can also help you create policies. Right? I'm going to show an example of question and answer. It can like help you deal with situation. I could be a manager and I'm having a tough situation with a particular employee. How do I deal with it? Right? If people have talked about such situations and put it on the World Wide Web, and they've also given a solution, and AI could probably come and tell me, hey, this is how somebody in Italy figured out how to solve the situation, right? And I can try to see if I can correlate it. So very interesting scenarios here as well, but it can also help with the ongoing operation support. I've gone through scenarios. I've talked about how AI can do a lot of great things. It can help employees, it can help managers, it can help you run a business. But it's very, very important also to understand some of the issues that people are seeing with AI. Now, I think one of the biggest issues is, remember, I talked about the systems being trained on publicly available data. So ultimately, the responses it gives, decision it makes, is going to be based on two things: what information we have given it for it to read, right? What are all the books in that library? Or is there a book which has incorrect information? So it's very important to be careful as we tread on this path of trusting AI with some of the decisions it makes or the information it gives. And remember that it's not only the data and information, but there's also an algorithm which has been written by a human being to use this data and information. And that could have biases related to gender, race. And how do you kind of make sure that you're really making the right choice? So whatever AI system you use, keep this at the back of your mind, because it may not be correct. And a lot of systems we use today will explicitly tell that to you. This is AI generated, so please tread with caution in terms of using this to make a particular decision. And also remember, there are a lot of legal regulations in terms of how we use AI, which regions, why we use AI. So keep these two in mind as you use these systems. To a large extent, I think the far more benefits that are coming out, people have benefited more than some of the issues that have come out with AI over the last many years. But it's always important to keep this in mind as you use these AI systems as well. More so in the HR world, because you're dealing with people. And like I said, that's the most important part of your organization. It's important that you keep that in mind. Okay. I'm going to take a pause here, right? And we're going to go and look at some questions that we got from the social poll that we ran a couple of over the past few weeks. So Veera, maybe I'll hand it over to you and maybe just talk about some of the questions that we had. I can give my insights.
Sure, so that we would love to hear your insights as well. And I'll also let the participants know that we usually run polls and the questions are usually related to our webinar. And we would like our speaker to speak about their experience or share some insights on why they think that most, people have voted for a particular option. So as you all can see, this poll question is basically focusing on recruiters. It says, recruiters, have you observed any common interview mistakes during your recruitment process? Which one should candidates avoid the most? Well, although the question is more focused towards recruiters, it certainly helps a lot of students, because freshers or students who are preparing for their interviews in the upcoming days should really be aware of this. And we had our options, which says arriving late for the interview, forgetting important points, being too nervous, and over explaining answers. And the option which says over explaining answers is the highest voted, which means recruiters are telling, do not over explain answers when we question you about something in interviews. But Siddharth, what is your insights on this? And let us know if you had any interesting interview experience.
Okay. No, I think a very interesting question. You are going to get different answers or people choosing different choices based on who they are, right? This probably was more targeted at recruiters. Hiring managers will have a different perspective, and also depending on the hiring manager, what kind of role you're dealing with will have a different perspective, right? But this is what I'm going to say, and especially given we have a lot of students here, right? When I interview somebody, I think the key thing I'm really looking for is, you know, can I work with you, right? Can you come and work in this company? Will you be a fit in this company? You do need to have some interest in the role that you're going to do. But remember, nobody is going to be perfect when it comes to knowledge or skills. But I'm really going to evaluate you based on, can you come over here and do I see that attitude in you to work hard and do really well? So it's perfectly fine, in my opinion, right? If people forget important points when they come in. It's really fine if they're nervous, right? That's expected. I think interviews can be nerve-wracking for anybody. And if you're over-explaining answers, I think it's less to do with your skills. It's more to do with maybe the way you learn to communicate. But for me, right, if I were to choose one thing which candidates should definitely avoid are some of the intangibles, right? The way you talk, and more importantly, choice number one, arriving late for the interview. Please don't ever do that, because that really starts you off on the wrong note, right? If you're already late for interview, I think there could be various reasons, but anybody who's going to interview you is really not going to start with a good impression. So it's important to keep the intangibles in mind. Make sure arrive early. Sure, go the previous day, go to the location, see where it is, see how much time it's going to take for you in the morning. Make sure you're on time. Make sure you're pleasant. Make sure you kind of talk well, greet everybody well. Those intangibles are very, very important. And of course, as part of the interview, trying to show that you have the attitude and you have the desire to actually work. But that is what is probably important perspective. But like I said, this is my perspective. This is my answer. There can be different answers you will get from different hiring managers. But the only advice I'm going to say is make sure some of these other soft aspects you keep that in mind when you go for it, because that's very important. All right. So this was one video. I think we had one more, right?
Yes, we have one more. So this is a kind of follow-up question, but also again, it caters to both recruiters and to students as well, or freshers who are attending an interview. Now, let's say whenever we sit for an interview, Siddharth, usually recruiters do question us a couple of questions, and one of the most important questions or the toughest questions they ask, according to me, is tell me about yourself more apart from what's in the resume, sir. That's something that usually tricks people off. So we would want to understand what usually are our audience toughest questions that they get asked in the interview. So the poll was, which is the tough interview question to answer? And our options were, what motivates you to take up this job role? What are your weakness and strength at work? And how do you handle challenging situations? And our highest voted answer was, what are your strengths and weakness? So tell me about how you have taken up interviews. I'm sure being in a managerial role, you must have taken, evaluated so many candidates. And have you ever asked these questions to somebody? Was there any interesting answer that you got, and a tip to how somebody should approach such questions?
No, I think these are this is again a great question, right? And these questions are going to be part of any interview you're going to go to. And I have been asked these questions in interviews. I constantly ask these questions in interviews as well, right? I'm not surprised. What is your weakness and strength at work has the highest votes, because that is a tricky one, right? Especially if you elaborate a bit more on your weakness, and you're asked follow-up questions on that. So it's definitely, I would have voted for that as well. The key thing is, this is a standard set of questions that are going to be part of any interview that you go to. It's important that you understand what the question is, but more importantly, it's important that you understand why they're asking this particular question. And this is where it comes into, do they see that drive in you? Do they see the desire in you to take up this role? So try to understand why, right? What motivates you? They're probably trying to understand if you've done the research on the company, the role, on the people, what it does, right? What are your weaknesses and strengths? Again, how much do you understand yourself? Nobody's perfect, right? there are some people who talk about interesting answers. A lot of them feel that they should just come and say, I don't have any weakness. Okay? And unfortunately, they don't really move past at this stage. People feel that, oh, I should not expose the weakness. Everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses, but do you understand what your weaknesses and have you worked on it? I think that's what we are really looking for when you ask that particular question, right? And handle challenging situations. Everybody should have gone through this, right? If you can't give an example from a professional side, you at least should be able to give one from a personal side. But again, great question. People who are going to attend interviews, make sure you at least understand what these standard questions are and able to respond to them. All right.
Thank you, Sidharth. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. We'll proceed with our webinar.
Great. So I think those are some pretty good questions and very interesting answers that came in. I'm probably going to take about a few minutes more. I want to quickly talk about how you can leverage AI. Right? We spoke about scenarios. So I'm going to quickly go through like 2 or 3 quick scenarios. So let's assume that you are part of HR operations, right? Part of the HR team. I think a lot of people are part of the HR team, and you've started operations in Thailand, and you need to write a remote work policy. So all you really need to do, right, is to go into one of these publicly trained systems, right, and just write a simple prompt, write a remote work policy for Thailand, which is 2 pages long, because that's how long your HR policies are, and write it in both English and Thai. And if you go and ask a system like ChatGPT or Gemini, you're going to get a very nicely curated, well-worded, grammatically correct policy that you can use. Right? Of course, don't just use it straight away. You need to go through it. You need to make tweaks pertinent to your specific company and do it. And I just ran this query earlier today, right? And both what it gave in English as well as Thai, right? Remember, language, that AI being trained as language is probably the biggest development that has happened. Both the English and the Thai versions were really good. I was able to take the Thai version, put it on Translate, and see if it really was accurate. So this is one way you can really cut down the time. You don't need to start off from scratch to write a policy document if you're charting. You can just leverage the tools that are already out there and then only spend about 20% incremental time to go and do this. Right? Let's look at another example. Right? You've gone to Germany. What are some of the regional rules that I need to comply with? So this is a bit more open-ended, right? It's not writing a policy. So the system should know or should have read the book about all the rules that Germany needs to comply with, right? And the answer it gave was very impressive, right? It was very clearly able to come and tell me, working hours is important, employment contract is important, how personal identifiable information is treated for employees or prospects, right, is important, right? So very impressive. So all you really need to do is take this, do your own research, and then go and do whatever you need to do in terms of the documentation. But this is publicly available information, right? What if you want to leverage privately available information just within your business and use that to your advantage? We spoke about attrition. So can you feed to one of these systems anonymized data of all your employees, their attributes, maybe their profiles, qualification, what role, how much they were earning, how their performance ratings were? Can I feed all of this into the system and then ask it a very, very qualitative question? What conclusions can you draw from this data? And what suggestions do you have to lower attrition? Right? I put this specific example because I've worked on something like this. Right? And the response was something very similar. Right? It came up with, I have a few observations. Majority who left were from a particular location. So maybe there's some problem in that particular location. Right? Make sure you have good leadership there. Make sure you have better engagement. It also was able to come and tell me that a lot of your attrition was from people who left in the first 1 year of joining. So can you increase your engagement levels? Right? Make sure that you do that 1, 3, 6 month check-in. Right? So it was not only able to analyze and tell me, identify patterns, but it was also able to come and give me recommendations because it's probably seen, read a book on, in terms of how people have tackled this particular situation, right? So this is where you're seeing it analyze, use its creativity, come with a judgment, and then use language to come and communicate it back to you. Okay. So some quick examples, right? But remember, it's completely up to you and your situation to see how you're going to use some of this. I want to conclude by saying that see, AI is a very powerful tool and it will really enrich our lives. And we're only going to see it become more and more embedded. I think we need to learn how to use it. I think that's step number one. But more importantly, we also need to know how to use it wisely. When do we use it? When do we not use it? We need to understand there could be biases. We need to understand that we incorrect. But really, the sky really is the limit in terms of how we can leverage AI. So please do try to understand what your specific needs are, how AI can help, right? Not for every situation AI can help. And then so I want to conclude with that, and we can definitely continue the conversation. If you have any questions, you want to reach out, this is my contact information. More than happy to answer any questions.
I
Thank you.
request all our participants to leave any of the questions they have in the Q&A box so we can ask Sidharth to answer them for you. And also, if any of the recruiters present in our participants today are interested in trying out Cognavi and Cognavi's AI features, feel free to book a demo with us. We'll have our demo booking link available in the comment section.
Okay. So, Veera, I see one question on the chat. It says, how does it compare to AI screening ATS matching the skills of the candidates with respect to the JD? Right? And again, this is a very probably the most basic use case for which AI is being used, which is JD, right? Where you really it can really identify the skills that are required. It can understand what you have written in your resume. It is able to summarize that and then see if you're running. That's probably the first use case that AI can be used for, especially on the recruitment part. Okay. Are there any other questions, Veera?
We have another question. So usually, when we speak about AI in the recent days, like let's say now people are taking an interest in it, but for a very long time, people avoided AI. Most of them who do not have a prior understanding or the mechanism about it, they literally thought that AI would replace human work. So they did not want to adapt to it, and they were like, AI is meant to replace human work and we don't want to lose our jobs. So why do you think this fear usually exists among people?
Okay, so it's I think natural for people to have this fear, right? And this is what I'm going to talk about in terms of you losing a job to AI. If you look at history, with every invention, somebody has lost a job. Going back to maybe the invention of the wheel, industrial revolution, there have always been jobs that have been displaced. But remember, you know, the human beings have definitely evolved, right? We have grown, our societies have grown because a new invention comes in, jobs could get displaced, but given productivity is going to improve with this new invention, overall your economy is going to improve and more jobs are going to be created, right? So this is called the displacement replacement effect, right? Wherein jobs will get displaced, right? Jobs that can now be taken over by some of these systems, right? Not necessarily AI. Over the last thousands of years, jobs have been replaced with new and new inventions that came in. But there's also a replacement effect, right? There's increase in productivity, and then due to that, economy improves, more jobs come. So it is bound to happen, right? And there will be jobs that will get displaced due to AI coming into the picture. Now, what can you do? And obviously, you need to see how you can safeguard yourself. Right? You need to have a clear understanding of seeing if the role you're doing, is there a possibility that with the recent advancements in technology and AI is going to replace, right? If that's the case, I think you will need to know how you can acquire new skills. And that'll be the advice that I'll actually say. Try to acquire new skills, right? Which are going to help you grow as well as it's also going to like protect you if at all your job will get replaced or displaced with AI.
All right. Thank you, Siddharth, for answering that question. We have another question from Sendil Kumar, which says, what's a legal protection of HR managers for use against human capital? So do we want him to explain the question more to us?
I think if I can just speak for Sendel, he's probably asking what is the legal protection we have as HR managers while using AI, right? For when it comes to some of these decisions, correct? Right. So I'll quickly answer that question. So there are a lot of regulations now coming in terms of where you can use AI, where you cannot use AI, right? And it also is very important to figure out. Like for example, you're using AI to screen resumes. You're using AI to uh, filter out people doing interviews, right? It's important that companies announce that, document that an AI system is going to be doing that. So you're going to see more and more laws coming in if you're going to use AI in any of your products. And that is what is going to protect you legally. If you are using AI behind the scenes without documenting, then you have no protection, right? Be it talent, be it business, be it whatever your function is, right? But there's more regulations, more laws coming. It's important to keep in touch with what those are so that you know what to document, what to really say when it comes to usage. Okay. And then I also see a question from another question which says, how can we manage the data and operations without data getting clumsier using data? Oh, that's a very interesting question. Now, ideally, if you're using AI the right way, the data should not get clumsy. It should get better, right? Though operations data, I've looked at a lot of the HR operations data. It's always you break your head trying to figure out how I can use it, right? So using AI, you can in fact clean it up, right? So I'm going to say it's quite the opposite. You should try to look at aspects of AI which is going to help you clean up the data. So there are AI systems which, if there's missing data, you can get that data into the system as well. So ideally, you should be using AI to clean it up. And if you're using AI and it becomes more clumsier, then maybe you're not using the right way. All right. I think we have one other question that have come in, which is again talking about ATS, right? See, ATS systems can screen, right, and it can filter out, right? But remember now AI systems are adding that additional thing, right? I talked about language. They can not only screen your profile, but they can actually summarize in English and tell you the reason we shortlisted this profile is because they have these particular skill sets, or they talked about that. So AI actually takes ATS systems to the next level. And I think that's the advantage that AI really brings.
Siddharth, on a lighter note, what actually got you interested in, understanding AI and becoming an expert in this field?
Well, I'm probably going to say there was a lot of curiosity, and that's probably reason number one. Reason number two, I was lucky to have great mentors at work about 6-7 years ago, the place where I was working, who kind of exposed me to all of this latest tech, right? So I think these were the two reasons. So a big thanks definitely goes out to the mentors and the leaders I worked with who really got me into it. And after that, there's really no turning back.
That's great. Having a good mentor does really, channelize everyone into their desired paths. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for a wonderful session today. I hope all of the participants had something really great, insights to take home with them. And we hope to see you in much more webinars. This was a lovely interactive session. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you soon in our next upcoming webinar.
Cognavi, pioneering possibilities.